You're listening to the End Zone Scoop, where 3 girls, 2 Brits and 1 American discuss the beautiful game of American football. So join me, Liz Bandari, NFLGirlUK, and my co-host Dayna O'Gorman from Our Turf Football and Shona Duthie from 99 Yards. Enjoy the show! Hello everyone and welcome back. We have got a lot to discuss today, but I think before we get into any of that, how are you both feeling? Because I'm shattered. Obviously we were up till 3:30 watching the game. I've been awake since 8:30 because my body clock's ridiculous, and then thankfully I have managed to get a good 3-hour snooze this afternoon. So how are you both feeling?
Well, I gave up on the game. I know I shouldn't have because there's normally comebacks, but the Chiefs' offense was just not on the ball. But I gave up on the game to actually watch CSI Vegas because that was more entertaining to me. Because I'd winded down watching that, I fell asleep quite quickly, and I've been working 8 hours a day, and I actually don't feel that tired, which I think is quite surprising for me. But the CSI episode was great.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
It wasn't so late for me. I think the game was over just a little after 9 p.m. my time. So I had a good night's sleep, but I was up for quite a while. I would like to call it dealing with Twitter because definitely was having to deal with Twitter. But it was interesting. Yeah, and we're going to talk about the Super Bowl, and I know that here in just a second, but I think I was so surprised for so much of the game that I was like, wait, did the Super Bowl start? Did we miss something here? I was confused.
Yeah, I hear you about the Twittergate. I had to mute about 8, 9, 10 words, right? And my Twitter this morning was a really weird place because normally I have lots of NFL tweets, but mostly it was just watch out for the snow and the cow has been on the road. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yes, I blocked everything.
That's hilarious.
All right, guys, let's get right into it with the Super Bowl then. So I don't know what people are expecting. I guess I didn't know kind of how I thought it was going to go. I know that I obviously wanted the Bucs to win. I know we've discussed this before. And I thought there was going to be a load of back and forth. I really thought this was going to be high energy, non-stop action. I genuinely believed that. We didn't get that. But I'm happy the Bucs won. That's our first female assistant coach to have won a Super Bowl, so that's amazing. So Coach Laura Locust, good for her. Tom got his 7th ring. And the best bit about that for me, it's honestly probably been shown now, this whole Monica 7 meme has just honestly been having me cracking up so much. Most because I know it winds you up.
Oh my God. Yeah. And that is funny. I know there are people like you out there that are big Tom Brady fans.
Hey, I'm not a big Tom Brady fan. I'm just saying I like him now.
Yeah, because he's a winner. That's why I like him.
His skin, his reptile skin does not change just because he has gone to the Bucs. It's just it's a different color of shirt.
He's a little bit of a chameleon. Yeah, here's the thing. I'm right with you, Liz. I was so surprised by what I was seeing on the field. I will tell you, I feel like I did 1,000 podcasts and radio shows and everything last week. And every single time I'm like, everyone can keep saying nice things that, this is going to be a close game, this, that, and the other, but it's not. The Chiefs are going to kill the Bucs in the end because they always do. They have this outrageous offense that just sometimes start slow, but they always come back and finish. And I'm like, I don't even think it's going to be close. I think the Chiefs are going to win by 10 points. I said that everywhere last week.
Yeah.
And so I just sat there watching this game, not recognizing anything I saw on the screen out of Kansas City yesterday. And I kind of thought it was a little bit of BS when they kept saying, oh, his toe is 100%. His toe is 100%. Well, sure it is because he's not in a game for 2 weeks. But then when Patrick Mahomes has to come in and play, and then he's forced to run as much as he was, I think I read a stat that, the amount that he ran before he would throw the ball was like 500 yards or something over the preseason or during the postseason, excuse me. And it was just amazing to me that he was running for his life. And we aren't used to that,
Yeah.
And then for him to not connect. And then I swear to God, if one more ball had hit Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill in the hands or in the face and they dropped it, I was going to scream. He was eventually getting the football to his receivers and they were just like, meh, why hold on to it? And I think all kudos and the MVP should go to the Bucs defense because it was an overwhelming performance for them to completely shut down that fantastic offense.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like we've switched roles this week, Dayna, because all of last week I was saying that it was going to be a defensive showdown. And I think whatever defense steps up is going to win this championship on Sunday. That was what I said all week on different podcasts. And that's why, I mean, I did say that I did think the Chiefs would win, but I thought it was going to be a lot closer game. But I said it's going to be whatever defense turns up on the day and shows their stuff. And I completely agree that one of the defensive players should have got MVP because they were the stars of the show. They held the best offensive team in the NFL right now to 9 points.
No touchdowns. That's insane.
Yeah, absolutely insane. And I don't know, like, I was really surprised with how the Chiefs were playing. I was with you. I was like, what has Hill and Kelce decided to just put butter on their hands and they're not going to catch anything? But yeah, I think some of the calls yesterday were a little bit soft as well. Some were definitely the right calls, but some I think were a little bit soft, especially for a Super Bowl game. And it kind of ruined it for me in the first half. But I think overall, the Bucs D stepped up, and that's why they won that championship. They were absolutely incredible.
It's so true. Yeah, and Terry McAulay, now he's a former NFL referee, and now on Twitter, he will go over the calls and he looks at them very objectively, which is what you would want out of a ref, right? And even he said that there was so much inconsistency that some of the refs on the field, some of the officials on the field were letting them play. Others were calling, ticky-tack things, or they were having some makeup calls. He said it was so inconsistent. And his point was that your top 3 officials need to be on the same page. Are we calling it tight? Or are we going to let them play? And they weren't. It was just kind of all over the place. But as much as Chiefs fans don't want to hear this right now, those calls were not why they lost that game. That's not it. Even if they had gotten a couple of those calls back, it wouldn't have changed much. Maybe got an extra touchdown, for Kansas City. But that wasn't the problem. The problem was the offensive line was Swiss cheese. Patrick Mahomes didn't have his normal speed. He was absolutely blanketed play after play after play by the Bucs defense. I mean, Levante David just stopped Travis Kelce. And I knew that a good game plan from the Bucs would be we're going to double Tyreek Hill every play. The guy's faster, than anyone else. And so you have to slow him down. So I'm like, this is going to be on Kelce's shoulders. This is going to come down to the run game and Kelce's shoulders. And they stopped that cold too. It was, you guys know I love defense. And it was just so impressive, the game plan that they came up with. I do think Mahomes' injury played into it a bit, but I think his injury was exacerbated because of how much he had to take off running.
Yeah.
I think, we got to give all the kudos to Ted Bowles. He looked at week 12 and was like, this was a mistake and we move on from it. And that is exactly what they did. And kudos to him because that is absolutely incredible game plan that he had yesterday. And, he had a bit of a tough ride when he was a head coach at the Jets. And, next season, if the Bucs D are that good again, Bruce Arians going to have a tough job keeping him as his defensive coordinator.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I have a question for you guys. So we kind of made fun of Tom Brady for a minute, because that's real easy to do. But just because it is, everyone talks about him all the time and everything and that sort of thing. But as I watched that game, Tom Brady did not stick out to me. It was nice that he wasn't throwing interceptions. And that's where I kind of argue with you, Shona, just a little bit about how whichever defense stood up. I didn't think the Kansas City defense was going to have to stand up that much because Brady had looked like crap in his last couple of playoff games. He'd throw 3 interceptions right in a row. In the Saints game, he threw interceptions against Green Bay. I mean, he just didn't look consistent. I think he had a 55% completion, rating or percentage in the postseason up to the Super Bowl. I was not worried about the Bucs offense at all. But as I was watching that, what rang through to me, and I'd love your guys' opinion on this, was they decided to use Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski had a very quiet season. He was not sticking out on that team at all. He'd had a very quiet postseason. He was used more for blocking. They were using their other weapons more. And it seemed like this game, they're like, well, this is all about you, Gronk. And he looked great in this game.
Yeah. It's almost like that was the game plan or something, though, because I was seeing quite a few things on like Twitter this morning where he doesn't apparently have really much of a relationship with the team, but he does with the people that he's recruited in. So I don't know. I think it's maybe that was his play call. Go with what he knows and trust to get the job done. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's some. I understand why Brady wanted Gronk on that team. That they had a great partnership at the Patriots. The other choices that he made, Antonio Brown makes me feel a little bit sick inside. So I'd rather not go down that road. But then Fournette was absolutely incredible as well. Like that's an excellent choice.
Great, yeah.
So some I completely agree with, and I understand him feels comfortable with a certain partnership, but others maybe not so much. Right. I feel really icky because I really wanted the Bucs to win because I have friends who are like the Bucs, like it's great for them. They haven't won a Super Bowl since 2003, but I just wish it wasn't Tom Brady.
Yeah,
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that, and see, I don't even care so much that it's Tom Brady. I just wish it wasn't Antonio Brown, and I think that we all three of us agree on that. In fact, I might have sworn a little on Twitter last night after his touchdown, and the reaction I got from people, they were like, "Dayna, we've never heard you like that before."
Like,
I was shocked, and I was like, "I saved that for the horrible humans of the world." And
you're like, "I hope you raw," and I was like, "Oh my goodness."
I do. I really, really, really do.
It was like Mama Bear has drank some Kool-Aid and she is telling us what she thinks.
I don't get that way often, but certain people bring that out in me. But it was interesting. You're absolutely right about Leonard Fournette. He looked fantastic. I love that they call him Playoff Lenny when he steps up in the playoffs. I think that that's great. But what this did do, I think, more than anything was, and we're going to talk about legacies here in just a little bit, the legacies of the quarterbacks and Andy Reid and that sort of thing. But I think that what this should prove to general football fans everywhere is that while it may look like just one player changed this team, that's not what happened. Mm-mm. What happened was this was a very good team that needed one more teeny piece. Tom Brady did not come in and change this entire team. Most of those players were there beforehand, and they have always been good. I've been begging for Mike Evans to wear blue and green for I don't even know how long, right? And so, but at the same time, I think what this showed is sometimes just the slight changes. And I consider Tom Brady a slight change. Not that he and Jameis Winston should be comparable, but it was a change in the plan, can completely change your season. And I think that should give all NFL fans a lot of encouragement that even if their team didn't make the playoffs or were out in the first round, that it really can just be slight adjustments, and then you never know what's going to happen the next year.
And I just want to just say this, for our listeners and for anyone who cares, you can have lots of the greatest of all time, okay? It doesn't have to be one specific guy, because it just seems to be said about Tom Brady all the time. Let's appreciate Serena Williams for what she does. Let's appreciate Tiger Woods for what he does. Let's appreciate Michael Jordan for what he does. Or Michael Jordan's going to come out of retirement and get another 7th ring, okay? Seriously.
Because he's going to take that personal.
Okay? I'm not saying Tom Brady's intelligent. The guy's won 7 rings, but let's just stop saying he's the greatest athlete of all time, because that's just another rabbit hole that it causes too much drama.
Well, and it's a ridiculous fight because, we've all talked about it. Every sport is different. You can go individual versus team sport versus this versus that versus, you know what I mean? It's just, it's a fruitless argument. People don't bother. Don't do it.
Appreciate who we got, appreciate that Roger Federer has won 20 tennis titles. Appreciate that, Serena Williams won a title when she was pregnant, for goodness sake. Let's just it's a lot about tennis, but let's just appreciate it. Okay. Tiger coming back and winning the Masters. Great.
That was really fun. Yeah. There are great sports moments for everyone. But getting back to that, we have to give Tom Brady his due, and I'm going to talk about that, and it's going to hurt me a little bit, I'm not going to lie, but I'm going to say a nice thing or two about Tom Brady when we talk about legacies. But I think that the sun is shining on him a little more than it should in regards to this game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really, that sun should be shining on that fantastic defense. And I say it all the time, and I get a lot of crap for it, but I'm going to say it loud and proud again. Offenses get you to the Super Bowl, defenses win you Super Bowls. And that's just the way it works.
Yep. I 100% agree.
Right. So we would normally do questions at the end, but because the questions I got are all kind of around the Super Bowl, I think let's just cover those now. So the first two questions are both from our good friend Duncan Terry, or Dunky Dunk as Shona calls him. First question is, the Bucs neutralized the deep threat playing too deep. Same thing that happened to Wilson from mid-season. How does a good OC beat it?
Well,
okay. Go ahead, Shona. Yeah.
I'll start this one. And I don't know if a lot of people are going to like what me and Dayna are both going to say.
Because we are in agreement in this.
It's the run game. That's how
you stop it.
That is how you stop it. You know what? I know. And I'm totally on Pete Carroll's side with this, and Seahawks Twitter is probably going to lynch me for it afterwards. Because that day was fun when he revealed that's what he wants to do next season. And the thing is, teams work it out, like let Russ Cook, that's a really hard saying, was a great movement. But if your teams are watching the games back, they're like, oh, okay, so he's going to throw deep then, because they're getting themselves out of a hole and they've got a non-existent run game. They work it out, and that's why you have to have this great run system. And that is why we've probably parted ways. I'm talking a lot about the Seahawks here, but that's probably why we parted ways with Shotty, because that's not what he wanted to execute, and that's the way Pete wanted to go down. So yes, it's all about the run game. Sorry, Duncan, if that's not what you wanted to hear.
Well, I agree with you on a lot of points. So, but there's two sides to this. So if you have a good offensive coordinator, they have a plan, a general plan for the offense. But if that plan's not working, you have to be able to make adjustments. And we've heard it over and over in lots of pressers, not just Pete Carroll's, not just Andy Reid's, which we heard after the Super Bowl last night. We've heard it from all over the league. Those halftime or in quarters or in-game adjustments are required.
Yeah.
Teams that get stuck in one thought process or one mindset, they're not going to go far, because as we saw, they figure you out very quickly. Good defenses will. Again, Super Bowls defenses. But so the whole point is that you have to be able to adjust and change, but a way that you don't have to even get into the rut of we throw the ball. We get behind in the first couple of quarters, Patrick Mahomes, but he will always save you in the end, because they'll start to throw, and he's got this amazing arm and these great deep threats. It's the same for Seattle. It was the same for a lot of other teams. If you can want to avoid that to begin with, you have to have a balanced attack. You have to have a good enough, not a dominant run defense, a good enough, or not defense, sorry, run game, a good enough run game that defenses don't just assume you're always going to throw it deep. Mm-hmm. You have to have that balance. That doesn't mean we're going to run the ball 60 to 70% of the time. Everyone freaked out for no reason about when Pete Carroll made that comment. But what it means is that you just have to be able to keep these defenses guessing.
Yeah.
Seattle didn't do it. And to be honest with you, yesterday, I don't think that defense was so fast, they could not have figured out how to do something different, because that defensive line just was coming down his throat every single play. The biggest thing that happened was that they completely took the deep ball away from Patrick Mahomes. There wasn't a single over 20-yard completion from Patrick Mahomes yesterday, which is unheard of. And so I think that You have to give Devin White, Levante David. You have to give, Shaquille Barrett, everyone who kept the pressure on Mahomes. That's where that credit comes from. And there was no adjustment out of Kansas City because they got so far behind from the get, they could never make it up. So I don't know if that answers this question, but it's got to be balanced. It's got to be a decent run game.
Yeah, and you're right about, I feel like, with the Chiefs yesterday and with the Seahawks, it's just examples. They didn't alter their game when it wasn't working. They're like, it's like the same with Russ, that, if we're behind, then he'll throw it and, Russ Cook will get us out of a sticky wicket. But it just proves that you need to, have that balance, have that good, if you're making a grilled cheese, make sure you don't burn the sides.
Right. Especially when your quarterback, as it was yesterday, is getting pressured over 50% of his dropbacks. Insane. And that is, again, all the kudos to the Bucs defense. But my God, you got to change something up if that's what's going on.
I'm also going to mention this a bit later when we talk about drafts. It's also about having a good O-line.
Oh, yeah. Poor Chiefs. That injury just killed them. Their O-line. Murder. Depth, yeah. People, get depth.
Yeah. Our next question, again from Duncan. Manning played with Jeff Saturday almost his whole career. It was really important to him. Brady has had a turnstile of centers. How do you rank its importance?
So I look at this a little, I don't know. I understand the relationship between a quarterback and their center. However, I think we have seen over the years that as long as you have a good center, the center almost becomes more important for the blocking, and that's true. But as long as you have a good center, a good quarterback can adjust to the personnel he's working with to a certain extent. So Manning, as we all know, Manning one, Mr. Peyton Manning, has a little bit of a loyalty issue. He wanted everyone around him the same all the time. He wanted to do the exact same thing, Omaha, 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 and it worked for him. I mean, he was just, elected into the Hall of Fame. Congratulations to him. He's a fantastic player. But in the general scheme of football, I think centers are important, but the quarterback always having the exact same center for his entire career, I just don't see a true importance to that.
And the next question is from Dan the Forest Man. He asks, what's... yeah, what a name.
I love it.
He asks, what's everyone's takes on the Chiefs flying in at 4 p.m. on Saturday for the Super Bowl? Utter madness.
I think it's a hard one to I mean, it's a bit late, but we're not living in a normal time. The Chiefs wouldn't have flown in at 4 p.m. on a Saturday normally for the Super Bowl. We're living in an era where it's the COVID-19 pandemic, and I think they made that decision based on what they thought was best for the health of their players and the risk of others, when they were landing down in Florida. Personally, I don't really think we can comment too much about it, just because we're living in such a strange time at the minute.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. The interesting thing here is, and maybe UK folks don't know this, but Florida is chaos right now. Florida has the highest number of COVID. They don't care if they wear masks. They break with the rules all the time. They fill their bars to capacity. I mean, Florida is like the wild, wild west. And so I can see why the Chiefs are like, yeah, no, we'll stay in our bubble. Thank you very much. You know what I mean? So they said that they were just going to keep to the same schedule they did when they went and played them during the season, because that worked well for them. And since there wasn't media day and there wasn't all the events and everything that had happened normally the week before the Super Bowl, it allowed them to stay home. I really don't think that them coming in late on Saturday really had that much effect on their game.
Let's not forget how much people were in that stadium yesterday. I mean, they were very separated, but what gave me anxiety was when they were all leaving at the same time.
Oh yeah. No, I'm telling you,
literally, it was
Florida's crazy. They're crazy.
They're crazy.
And the final question comes from Ian Hunt. He asks, why didn't the Chiefs come with a plan B?
Well, I think we've already kind of touched on this when we were talking about the Super Bowl. They had no time to come with a plan B. That defense was running hot all night. They were not. I thought at some point they're going to get tired. That did not happen. I had a joke that Andy Reid was giving his players, Michael Jordan's special stuff from Space Jam. No, I think that was Bruce Arians to his defense. He was like, no, come on, keep going, guys, because they did not let up all night. And that, I think they may have tried to have a plan B, but they just couldn't execute it. They didn't have time to.
Mm-mm. Well, and once you get behind, so I mean, if plan A is, Patrick Mahomes to be Patrick Mahomes, and plan B is, oh crap, we have to switch to a bigger run game. Well, when you're behind, that doesn't work. And so I think what happened is we did see a bit of an adjustment when Patrick was not connecting with the players down the field. They did try and switch to a cross, but to more, the short passes, and that didn't work either because those linebackers were just on fire. So I think that I don't know what plan would have helped them last night by the way they were playing. All right. So first of all, thanks guys for your questions. I think that that's so great that you guys send us your questions every week and we like to answer them. So, and we hope we do a good job. I wanted to talk about legacy. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this was, I saw a poll earlier in the week. So maybe about a week ago now that said, and it was by I believe it was, a pretty well-respected media person. And I was so irritated by it, but the poll said, who will a win have a bigger effect on their legacy? And the three options were Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, or Andy Reid. And I got real irritated. And the reason why is because as we were talking earlier, I get tired of the constant comparisons, right? So it's like Patrick Mahomes is literally at the beginning of his career. You guys, Patrick Mahomes has been a starter for 3 years. We feel like he's been around forever. He really hasn't. He's brand new baby, right? Tom Brady's been around forever, already had won 6 rings at that point, 7 now, had well established his legacy and his career.
Yeah.
And then to throw the coach in there, I thought that was really strange. Like, why would it truly affect Andy Reid's legacy when he's one of the most respected coaches in the league? And so it was very interesting to me. Believe it or not, the poll results said it was going to have a bigger effect on Patrick Mahomes, which just made me laugh because he's just getting started. There's no way to know what this legacy will be for him, So I looked at it and I was trying to answer the question logically in my head when I was thinking about this. And truly, if you have to pick from those 3, it would be Tom Brady, because we started the year out with the question of who would have, the greater impact on a good season, would have a greater impact on Belichick or Brady, who was going to win that battle. And we've talked about that a million times. But Tom Brady winning with a different team, I think just puts him at a different level. And I think that's why we're seeing all the GOAT conversations this, today, because getting to the Super Bowl as many times as the Patriots did, and having that dynasty, it is exhaustingly hard and has never been done before. And it will never be done again. I can almost promise you that, although Chiefs fans don't want to hear that either right now. But at the same time, for Brady to leave that system and to be pulled apart from that, one of the best coaches of all time, starting over in a different city, and the first year he's there to have a Super Bowl ring, I think that just puts him at a different level. But we have to remember, the only legacy Tom Brady will have is in the Hall of Fame, and he was going to be there anyway. And so congratulations to him. Pat him on the head. I'm very happy that you can prove at 43, you can still kind of go hang with the young kids. But I think this Super Bowl was not a legacy defining question for any of those players at all.
No, I think you're right. I think at the end of the day, you can't start having those kind of conversations when people are at different stages of their careers and all that kind of stuff. Like, Tom Brady's built his legacy. He is where he is. I honestly think I thought that, when he was at Patriots, that would have been his kind of final season. It's not. Mm-hmm. Then I kind of thought this might be his final season. Clearly, he still wants to play for a bit longer. He's not gonna stop anytime soon. Patrick Mahomes is at the start of his career, so he's going to continue. And he's so bloody good. Like, he will, I think, have a stronger legacy than Tom Brady one day. But for now, yeah, that's it's basically Brady.
I just don't think you can compare it. Like, it's just 3 different people and 3 different, and okay, if you were going to make any comparisons, there is 2 quarterbacks, but one is at near the end of his career. Okay, people he might go on until he's like 60 at this rate. But and one is just starting. And then there was also all the comparisons floating in around yesterday about the comparisons with Wilson and Mahomes because they lost their year one, won their second year, won the Super Bowl in their second year, and then lost the Super Bowl to Tom Brady. I mean, are people trying to say that Wilson's now down and out, which is not true because he's still coming out to his peak as well? It's like you can make these weird comparisons. Yes, obviously Brady is entering the Hall of Fame, but he was going to anyway. He'd won 6, incredible. Now he's won 7, more than any team NFL franchise. I just don't really understand the whole. This is where I get kind of irritated. It's too much of a love fest. I was going to say another word, but that's maybe not PC. It's too much of a love fest, and I appreciate he's really talented. I already know he has a great legacy. I don't think he needs to be compared to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, who are 2 different types of people completely altogether.
And I wonder often, you guys, what do these comparisons do for anyone? Like for someone to say, now we have all seen the Peyton Manning, Tom Brady comparisons because they came out about the same time. They played the same, number of years. Well, Peyton Manning just got into the Hall of Fame. Tom Brady's still playing. So you can't make those comparisons anymore. So it's like, what do trying to find comparisons do other than fill media pages? Because that's really all that it does. You cannot compare the situations. You can't compare the coaching. You can't compare any of it. And so I don't understand what the purpose is for some people. But other than to say, these are fantastic players. They're fantastic football minds. And we should be so grateful that we get to watch them play.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
All right. So kind of, I guess, continuing the theme of things. Now, first thing this morning, I straight away checked, like, how long until this new season kicks off? And so the answer to that is we've got 7 months to go. So, keep that in mind. But then you forget there's actually so much that happens during the off season as well that we should all be looking out for. So we know that the impact of COVID-19 on the combine, but otherwise, much like last year, the league's going to continue to kind of press forward and keep going about their business. So a couple of things to look out for then. So between February 23rd and March the 9th, that is the window for teams to designate one franchise or transitional player. Between 15th of March and the 17th of March, there's 3 days where teams are, permitted to contract, contract negotiations, but they're allowed to contact players with agents who are basically going to become unrestricted. And then obviously, I think that's the point where free agency begins, or is that afterwards? I'm sure Dayna will tell me. March 17th, so 4 p.m. Eastern Time or 9 p.m. for us in the UK. That is the official start of the 2021 league year. So basically that means that, players on their 2020 contracts, those are expired. Clubs can start signing new people. And any reported trades and signs can't kind of be announced until, I think, 4 p.m. or 9 p.m. our time. Off-season workout program begins on April 19th. April 23rd is the last day for restricted free agents to sign offer sheets. And then, of course, between April 29th and May the 1st is the 2021 NFL Draft, which is taking place in Cleveland. Now, we don't know yet if that's virtual or face-to-face, but if it's virtual, then, if last year's anything to go by, I'll definitely be watching that because that was, I don't know, I loved seeing what people's lives are like. So it was fun looking at people's living rooms and all that kind of stuff. Like, Cliff Kingsbury was ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he was.
Oh my God. I was like, damn, Cliff. I was like, you want to be like Ryan Gosling in that crazy, stupid love movie.
I love that film.
Next thing you know, you're gonna be whipping a girl up in the air like Dirty Dancing.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, there is so much to look forward to. And yes, you're absolutely right. So March 15th through the 17th is what they call the legal tampering stage. And so that is where clubs can contact the agents and say, hey, so what are they thinking? Do they think they might want to go ahead and sign with us? This is how much we'll offer. Technically, you're not supposed to do that beforehand. Although Matt Stafford sure did. I don't know. But so they're doing, that's called the legal tampering period. Then March 17th, so on St. Patrick's Day, is actually the official start of the year. So that is when free agency frenzy absolutely starts. Like you are going to be hearing boom, 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 one thing after another, all these players moving all over. And especially this year, ladies, you guys, this year is going to be crazy because the cap they've come out, they really think it'll be 181 million or 182 million. Now that is about 6 or 7 million more than they thought they were going to get. It's still a huge drop from last year, or from going what they expected. This year it should have been like 200 or more, and it had to drop back obviously because of COVID and the loss of revenue from last year. So what that means then is teams are going to have to start making some pretty big decisions. Hello, New Orleans Saints. I don't know what's going on the Saints. We could do a whole show on what is going on in New Orleans. But as of right now, or I should say before Drew Brees changed his salary, and I can explain that here in a second, they were going to be $100 million over the cap. $100 million over the cap. What? That's an entire team's roster. Like, I don't even know what they were going to do with that. But Drew Brees let them change his salary, decrease it to like vet minimum, I think, because he will retire in June. And then he will get his signing bonus, which doesn't count against the cap, but it gives the Saints a little bit of leeway, but not a lot there. Oh my gosh, that's such a disaster. And now they're getting fined for more COVID violations. Like, it's crazy. Anyway, but that is when we're going to see a lot of moving and shaking, big pieces, big trades. That is when we will probably see free agents signing. However, there are a couple of cap experts out there. And if you guys ever want to know cap experts, I have a handful of really good ones. So just get a hold of me on Twitter and I will link them to you. They really believe that it might take a little longer for some of these free agents because the money is not there to just pay them what they want. And so it could be a little harder for some of these big name free agents to be signed. So that's really the day. That's when a lot of teams can change on a dime, is that March 15th through probably the 20th of March, right in there. Those 5 days can be, that's kind of the really fun part of the off season.
You know how like accountants get excited about tax season?
They don't. They really don't.
Some do. This is my kind of time of the season. I love this time of the season. It's so exciting. Like, you see players switching around. You see teams, the guys in the college declaring for the draft or deciding to stay on. And then you have the draft that culminates in it all. I find this, people are always like, Shona, you're so strange. And I'm like, no, it's just really exciting. You just start seeing teams like trying to build up like who they want to have in their run towards the Super Bowl. And I think it's a great time.
Well, it's fun because anything is possible, right? Everybody is 0-0, and everyone wants that one player, wants things changed. And that's the opportunity for that to happen. So it can be really fun.
So speaking of the draft, I can't believe we're actually talking about the draft already. It feels like yesterday we talked about the draft last year. And then it also feels like 5 years away because of the pandemic, but we won't go into that. So this draft, we still don't really know what's going to happen because we don't know if it's going to be a virtual event again or it is going to happen in Cleveland. It all depends, I guess, on what Ohio's policies are by that point, because if they're Florida, then anything goes. But it's going to be really interesting to see who goes where and what teams start to, where teams get that players, because if it was me right now, if I was coaches watching that game last night as a neutral, I'd be looking at making sure I have a good O-line and a good D-line because they were unreal yesterday, both of them, for the Bucs, not for the Chiefs. We won't go into it. I guess for the first overall pick, people keep saying that it is going to be Trevor Lawrence and he is going to likely go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But then there's also like other exciting things in terms of like, are the Jets going to stay at second or are they going to jump back? And this is where the draft gets really exciting because, you have all the mock drafts start coming out and fans start getting excited about who their team going to pick. And I know it's really weird, but the funniest thing for me is when fans start losing their shit when that team above has drafted the player they want because the mock draft told them that the Seahawks or the Denver Broncos were gonna draft him. And I'm like, well, happens. I find it really exciting this time of the season. And so just for you, what's the most exciting part of the draft for you guys?
This is going to sound terrible, but I love it when teams move up and down and there's the gasp in the media room. Oh, they've moved back, or oh, someone. It's like such overreaction to moving up 2 spots. Like, I think that is hilarious to me. Like, I'm like, you do you, boo. I mean, you're just having a good time with it, but I really like when you were mentioning the virtual draft. I really like seeing the players seeing their dreams come true, and and those great phone calls that we get to hear. DK Metcalf still sticks with me, that he was so upset, and it was just so wonderful to hear, and I love that, and the family's going crazy. So I wouldn't mind if it was virtual again either, to be honest with you, because I liked that too. But I think that if you talk to most draft experts, truly there's only about 10 to 15 true first round prospects. These are players that are going to make an impact on the team the day they walk into the locker room. After that, there's not as much that we know of, because obviously we've seen players in late rounds make huge impacts, but we just don't know enough about them. This year is going to be a lot of that because of the way the college football season went. So there's going to be a lot of unknowns. There's going to be a lot of question marks. And there's a lot of teams without first round picks. So we're going to talk about that here in just 1 second. But so I think that that's really interesting to see how well these mock drafts do this year, because of the less exposure we've had to these prospects. So, and these college players. So it'll be interesting. This year of all years, I think, is going to be must-see TV, just to see what happens.
Yeah, so I've never, up until literally last year, I'd never really watched the draft properly before. I think I'd, caught up with things online, but other than that, I'd never really appealed. But because it was virtual last year, I was a little bit intrigued, wanted to watch it. And yeah, do you know, I really enjoyed it. Kind of what you said, Dayna, and it's the excitement of things moving around. But yeah, and again, having that insight of seeing, people, their entire family, those kind of reactions to things. And last year got interesting because certain people in families took over and whatnot, and it seemed to be about them in the spotlight. But yeah, I mean, you can't deny a bit of drama.
Oh, my highlights of the draft last year was when the mums were like, "Don't you dare take my son's shot! Don't you dare!"
Mm-hmm.
That was like my favorite. And then we had one of the pundits actually doing a first round draft thing on Twitter of all the top mums reaction to to girlfriends trying to hog the limelight. It's really fun.
It is fun. It is fun. All right, so
Wilson's ex-wife now doing that. Oh yeah, fun times.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's hilarious. All right, so we're going to move on. Our last topic for today is quarterbacks and the quarterback carousel, and the reason that this kind of ties in with the draft is because the first round picks are flying out the door this year. Like, nobody cares. Let's give them all away. We're just, don't need them for the draft this year, apparently. And so obviously the big one that started was the draft the trade that's not official, that we're not really supposed to count yet, but we're all going to, for Matt Stafford going to the Rams. And then, of course, the Rams sending 2 first round picks, a third round pick for this year, because they don't have a first round pick for this year either, and Jared Goff to Detroit. Now, I think there were a couple of reasons that people were really surprised about this. The first of all is that no one was surprised that the Rams were trying to get out of that contract that they had with Goff. We knew that would happen. I think that people were surprised that it was Jared Goff instead of possibly some of the other options that were out there, Deshaun Watson, and B, 2 first round picks for Matt Stafford. Okay, so here's the thing. The first round pick that went with Matt Stafford was to say, we're really sorry that you have to take Jared Goff's contract with him. And then the second one was probably for Matt Stafford. I like Matt Stafford as a quarterback. I think he's good. I'm not really sure he's the perfect fit for the McVay system, but it will give him a different weapon because, they're not really good with the deep ball, and that's what Matt Stafford excels at. So I think that will be interesting. He's a different type of quarterback than Goff, and so it'll be interesting and probably actually pretty fun to watch them adjust to that. But what's more important in this trade, in my opinion, is what it did to the Deshaun Watson situation. Deshaun Watson wants out of Houston. Well, if someone's going to give 2 first-round picks, a third pick, and a player for Matt Stafford, they're going to have to give an entire franchise for Deshaun Watson at this point. I think I read that I think it was like 4 to 5 first-round picks is what it would take to get Deshaun Watson. I do not think, and this is no disrespect, that there is a quarterback out there that is worth 4 to 5 first-round picks. Sorry, I just don't. And a couple, yes. 2, maybe even 3, but 4 to 5, no. That's, someone's entire career in the NFL, because the average NFL career is only about 4 to 5 years. And so I think that what that did was make it very hard for Watson and the Houston Texans to part. I would not be surprised at this point if they don't end up just holding on to him, which I know is not what he wants, and he's threatened to hold out, and that could get really ugly. The other news that came out, it sounds like, and this is not going to shock anybody who follows them, that the Dallas Cowboys are probably going to franchise tag once again Dak Prescott. I'm blown away at this news. I thought for sure that they would let him go, be done with that, and move on. But I think that goes to show the situation right now in the NFL. There are not a lot of franchise quarterbacks out there right now. And so it makes it difficult when you have a guy like Dak to actually just let him go. There were rumors that he was going to end up in Minnesota, then he was going to end up in San Francisco, and then with the Jets, and then with this, all over the place. That completely stopped. And then we heard the same thing about Watson. Then Kirk Cousins, we were all of a sudden, Kirk Cousins would get traded. That was very strange. So I think what we're going to see as the dust settles, that there'll probably be less quarterbacks traded or let go, less than we thought there probably will. I don't think there'll be the chaos. But one we know for sure will probably be going is Wentz. Apparently Carson Wentz's trade to the Chicago Bears will be announced sometime this week. At least that's what the rumor mill has it. But Shona, the newest news out there is the Jets are going to trade Sam Darnold. And how flippin' happy would that make us? Because as you guys know, Shona and I have a thing. We like Sam Darnold and want him with a different team. But then you have to look at who's going to put Sam Darnold as our starter. I mean, it's going to be so crazy. So, Shona, I'm asking you, where do you want our poor little Sammy to go if he gets traded?
I mean, well,
anywhere but New York. That's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I love Sam Darnold, and people know I love Sam Darnold, and I will literally die on this hill until he's not in the NFL, because I think he's had a really rough ride as a starting quarterback. But maybe it might be good for him. And I'm not saying he'll do this, and I'm not saying that it's going to happen. It might be good for him to sit behind somebody for a year or two. He needs a little bit of a break, and he needs a little bit of a confidence boost as well. And if the Jets aren't going to keep him on, which sometimes I think they should, because it's a new coaching system now, give the guy a chance, because he proved himself towards the end of last season. It might be good for him, but I don't really just anywhere that isn't going to ruin him, basically. So yeah, New York.
Yeah. It's interesting. If you look at the options, the teams that actually could pay out the nose for Deshaun Watson, the New York Jets are at the top of that list. They have 2 first-round picks in the next 2 drafts, and that came from Seattle in the Jamal Adams trade. So they could give up one of their first-round picks in the next 2 drafts, which they would still then have first-round picks in those drafts. And then they have a couple of high-end players that they could technically send with those picks to Houston, and they've got some leverage in the later drafts if they wanted to add in some extra picks then too. And they could send Sam Darnold with them. And so really, that would be really logical. I don't know that that's, because we all know Deshaun Watson has to approve a trade because he has a no trade clause. I don't know that that's where he wants to go. He really was leaning Miami, but I just don't see Miami giving up on Tua that quickly. But it would be interesting. Of all teams, it seems like the Jets would have the capital to do it. And if they're talking about moving on Darnold, it might be a perfect fit.
Let Russell take him in. Russell will give him open arms. Come to Seattle. Come, I'll nurture you.
A little bit different of a style, but maybe.
Yeah, slightly very different, very, very different. In a dream world, I would see Sam in green and blue. Oh my god, I'll see her Twitter. It's going to be like, get Shona off of all podcasts.
Right.
She Sam Darnold at CIC Hawks.
Well, before we end today, because I know we're at the end of our show, I just want to thank you two girls. We have had such a good time this season, and it's been so much fun. Talking football with you guys and getting to know so many more UK fans. I've had such a blast doing that. And there are so many fantastic fans over there, smart, knowledgeable people who know about football. And I've had such a good time all season doing that. And I really look forward to continuing it through the off season and into next year again.
Yay, can't wait. No, I too completely with you, and I've really, really enjoyed it. Like, you guys know me in the sense that I always get nervous about answering questions, things like that, but you guys teach me so much and I love that. So no, thank you guys.
Yeah.
I always feel I just chat at her pants. So,
but that's fun.
Sometimes you girls like to, rein me in a little bit because I get a little excited about my analogies. So yeah, I have fun with that, to be honest with you.
You get to have your own mind and we love it.
Yeah, no, it's been great again. This is the second year we've done it now, and I've loved every second of it. It's really fun. So thank you, girls.
And thanks to all our listeners. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, we love you guys. Keep listening to my analogies, please, because I know you're busy.
Well, that's all for this week's episode of the End Zone Scoop. Thanks for tuning in, and if you haven't already, please rate, review, subscribe, and hey, tell a friend about us too. Until next time, thanks for listening.